Welcome to Terror in Tandem, a podcast about finding entertainment in the macabre. Hosted by the knowledgeable and lovable Laura and Richard Mathiasen. Each episode, we discuss the horror genre, from books to film to TV and beyond. Sometimes even from beyond. You can find us online at terrorintandem.com and on Instagram at terrorintandem. Hello.
Jeez Louise,
What?
you're really going crazy with that.
I mean, I feel like you could just insert anything.
Yeah, I
Going
know. I'm going to
crazy.
say that for every episode.
Yeah.
So also, bees.
I was just going to say, hope y'all like bees. I'm sorry, did you say bees?
Jeez Louise, bees.
Are you saying beads or bees?
No one's going to get that joke.
Hi, everybody.
Who, me? Hi, it's just me. This is just for us. Have you realized that yet?
Oh, right.
And listener.
Hi, listener.
Hello, listener.
What are we doing today?
Candyman.
Oh, whoa.
Sorry.
Hold on.
I got
My goodness.
really
That
excited.
was close.
Mm-hmm.
So, listener, we are doing a remake today of Candyman.
Candyman.
I
I
just
should
want
put
you
the
to know
mirror
that
down.
we've had all mirrors and reflective surfaces taken out of the room. I mean, for the obvious precaution, because we're going to be
And the
saying,
non-obvious reasons.
yeah, all the. Well, there is my narcissism. When I walk into a party,
A drop of water
I walk
is
like I was
enough
walking
of a
into a
reflective
yacht.
surface for you to
just
lose
wait. No,
yourself.
keep looking at me. I can
No.
see in your eyes. Oh my
it's
God,
not. That's hate.
my magnificent
That's
reflection.
only disgust.
What? I feel you're getting like super mean.
I
And you're-
am getting.
Hate, disgust. These are strong words.
They're words of affection.
Oh, my bad. Anyway, so yeah, we've had all reflective surfaces taken out of the room because we're going to be saying Candyman a lot
Candyman.
as we discuss both the 1992 original, directed by Bernard Rose, and we're just going to skip over the two sequels, Farewell to the Flesh and Day of the Dead, because they're not great.
I didn't even know there were sequels.
Yeah,
So
they're not very good.
can I say
you know what?
something?
Second one, Farewell to the Flesh, is okay, but
can I say something?
yeah, please.
When you say Candyman 5 times,
Yes.
as we will, sort of talk about in a minute, what if you said it once, then I say it, then you say it, then I say it?
Really good question. I think it has to be done by the same person because it's like, a one person summoning.
What if I say it one day
No.
for 5 days
Has
in a
to
row?
has to be done in a row. It's not like a cumulative, I've said it 5 times in my life while walking past a storefront window. No, there's a ritual to it. It's a summoning.
Oh, I know it's a summon.
So like you have to sit down and do it, and I feel like there's a purpose behind it. But we'll get to that.
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, yeah, we're going to be talking about the 1992 original and the 2021 kind of sequel remake. It's part of this
a contemporary incarnation is what it's been described as.
part of this new trend, like the Halloween movies, that I'm a big fan of, honestly, because what ended up happening with a lot of these brilliant films, they had amazing first entries, and then the studio system just beat them into the ground with sequel after sequel after sequel, and they were not done with the same level of respect, often not done with the same creators or people, talent involved. So this idea of honoring the original and the idea and not just remaking something like a cash grab, I love it because remakes on their own, they often don't work. They just, even if they're technically proficient, they're just certain, they usually lack the heart.
Well, it's also 30 years since the original Candyman, so it would be almost impossible to have all of the same people involved with all of the same motivations.
For sure.
In order to make something they've already made. So, yeah, the original Candyman was directed by Bernard Rose and produced by Clive Barker. and it's based on his short story called The Forbidden.
Love Clive Barker.
It has the backdrop of Cabrini Green.
Wait, in Chicago.
In Chicago.
Yeah.
And so it starts out with Helen, the character of Helen, played by Virginia Madsen.
Legend.
She's a graduate student doing a thesis on the urban legend of Candyman in the Cabrini Green projects. She starts to interview people and goes into the projects to do research.
Yeah, with her co-student,
her friend,
Casey,
Bernadette,
played by Casey Lemons.
Yep.
Right.
So she and Bernadette essentially, start to do this research. And if the legend is, if you say Candyman in the mirror 5 times before turning the light off, he'll appear and kill the person who said his name along with any witnesses.
Kind of like Bloody Mary.
Yes. A lot of people in this movie, and then we'll talk about it in the contemporary remake, brush this off. They don't think it's real.
Yeah.
They are just like, oh, sure.
Yeah. So can I jump in for a second? Because this is a theme with Clive Barker. Fucking around with stuff you clearly shouldn't.
Right.
Like the lament configuration, the puzzle box from Hellraiser.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to pick it up and fuck with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because every time someone does, chains with hooks on them shoot out, and then Pinhead comes and, says something creepy about your suffering.
Yeah.
And like this movie, no one is making you stand in front of a goddamn mirror and say Candyman 5 times. And it's always what I like, especially in the beginning, that scene with Ted Raimi.
Right.
Always nice to see Ted Raimi pop up, by the way, especially just for a moment. It just has this element of like kind of privileged people who think that things can't touch them, just going like, oh, ha, 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 nothing can hurt me. Nothing's real for me. I live far away from this stuff.
Yep.
And then deliberately summoning this evil, like, for fun. But I don't know. Clive Barker, he's got a running theme of people just messing with things that should be left alone.
Well, Helen, like I said, played by Virginia Madsen, she's white. Bernadette is black. So they're going and doing this research, and Bernadette is rightfully freaked out. She's very uncomfortable there.
Yeah.
But Helen is like, no,
Yeah.
this is amazing.
That's right.
I need to figure all of this out. So she stays around.
And she acts like an anthropologist.
Yeah, she takes all these pictures of the graffiti, and she starts to, start piecing things together, because one of the pieces of graffiti says "sweets for the sweet," and that goes back to that urban legend that you've all heard of, Candyman giving candy by putting razor blades in the candy.
Yeah, or the urban legend of people passing out candy, but it's drugs,
right?
Or it's mind control stuff. It all goes back to like the Pied Piper. Of someone is corrupting your children, someone under the guise, the John Wayne Gacy, the evil clown.
Yes.
It's a very old, fear.
So what happens during this, excursion that Helen is taking is she gets attacked by a fake Candyman. He's a gang leader of the overlords.
Yes.
of the area. And while the cops think that the gang leaders responsible for all of the murders that have taken place in Cabrini Green, the real Candyman does appear to Helen and takes over her body and mind with hypnosis.
Yes.
One of the pieces, though, of the actual legend behind Candyman is back in the 1890s. Candyman was an African-American son of a slave.
Named Daniel Robitaille.
Yes. He grew up and became a well-known artist, and then a white man hired him to do a portrait of his daughter, but the artist and the daughter fell in love, and he got her pregnant. And then the father hired a man to kill him and had his right hand cut off and covered in honey so bees would sting him endlessly.
Yikes.
And then they burned his body on a pyre, and the ashes were scattered all over what would become eventually Cabrini Green.
That's what we call overdoing it.
Yeah, that's overkill.
Yeah. So, but it does play in to the very unfortunate, very real phenomena of white culture appropriating or appreciating and loving black culture and appropriating it and being just fine with black artists producing art for us to consume, but not having respect for the blackness of the artist.
Right.
It's like every few years, when like certain segments of America rediscover that Beyonce is actually a black woman, and they get like very upset about something she said, and it's like, no. I understand that she produces a lot of art that you like, but she also has an identity,
and it's an amazing one.
So this idea of like Daniel Robitaille being an artist producing art for the white masters of the time, and then being punished for acting like a human being.
Yes. So eventually, the like I said, the real Candyman takes over Helen via hypnosis, played by Tony Todd.
Oh, gosh.
Who is incredible. Not only is his voice incredible, but he has this look that just captures a vibe that can only be Candyman.
It's like he embodies that role so completely. Tony Todd, for nerds of a certain age, you will certainly recognize his voice as Darkseid from the Justice League cartoons. He was also in Platoon. He's in a million movies. He's a very talented actor. But Candyman is his legacy, for sure. Right. The role is Tony Todd to the degree that when the remake was announced and it had been delayed a few times because of COVID, there was so much secrecy around, is Tony Todd going to return? Is he going to be in this? Everyone was talking about it.
And we'll let you know if he is. So back to Helen and Candyman. Helen goes crazy. She's nuts. She starts killing people. Candyman starts kidnapping people. He kidnaps a kid. The police are like after Helen. She's just gone off the deep end. And then Bernadette, her friend, goes to check on her, and then she kills her. And so she gets committed to a psychiatric facility, and she finally gets to see the doctor, and the doctor doesn't think that Candyman is real. So
my absolute favorite scene of the whole movie.
So in order to prove that Candyman is real, she again conjures him, and then he kills the doctor.
He kills the doctor with his hook.
Yes.
And then does this thing that I've never seen before.
Because he has a hook, because as you remember...
Yeah. They cut...
His hand was chopped off covered in honey, fed to bees.
So there's like a hook jammed in the stump. So he flies through the window backwards, but he crumples through it. It's like a tether tied around his waist, pulling him backwards, and just the way it's so eerie, the way it's
into
done.
That mirror and how it.
No. When he leaves the psychiatrist's office after slashing his throat, he just goes backwards through the window. I've never seen anything like it. It's just so eerie, and it really speaks to Bernard Rose, who is not a horror director. He was originally a music video director. He very famously directed the music video for Frankie Goes to Hollywood's Relax, which had to be heavily censored. The version that Bernard Rose shot was pretty racy. Bernard Rose actually, I think he got the gig over drinks with Clive Barker after Clive Barker had just did the 1-2 punch of Hellraiser in 1987 and Nightbreed in 1990. His two big directorial bouts. I think he went on to do Lord of Illusions, and he really hasn't directed much since then, which is a shame. The few movies he's done have been really good.
Well, that's great. That's a good legacy to have. Guess.
I mean, God, Clive Barker certainly has a legacy. That's for sure.
Does. So, just to round out the plot of the original Candyman, as I mentioned, Candyman takes a kid. He's a baby. Helen makes a deal with Candyman Take Me.
No one believes Helen.
No,
either.
no one believes
No one
her.
believes her.
Take Me instead of the baby.
Yeah.
And so there's some sort of like party going on in Cabrini Green, and the baby gets returned to the kid's mom, and basically there's a terrible fire.
Well, it's a bonfire that the residents have set because it's a New Year's party. And they do it every year. They build a huge bonfire, and the denouement of the film, the battle between Candyman, Helen, and trying to rescue this baby, it's in the middle of this bonfire.
Yes.
Yeah.
But she catches on fire and dies.
Oh yeah.
And the what I love, I guess it would be sort of the stinger of the movie-ish.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Is Helen's bastard of a husband. Which,
we didn't mention him.
No, we didn't mention him because I don't think it's important in the sense of he's a character, but in her journey, I don't think it's as important.
I very much disagree.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Absolutely. So first off, played by the...
Let's hear it.
Inimitable Xander Berkeley. I mean, no one can play. And I was thinking about it when I was working on this episode. No one plays the smarmy douchebag like Xander Berkeley. Xander Berkeley just does such a great job of playing that, like, you can have drinks with this guy, and then halfway through the night, you're like, what an asshole. And I was wondering, like, well, what is it about him? And it's nothing. He just looks like a normal person, which is usually what those kinds of people look like.
For those of you
smarmy,
who
like, know-it-all douchebag
might need a sort of contemporary reference for Xander Berkeley, he has been in
everything.
I mean, he's been in a lot.
So many things.
But
he was in 24.
Yeah, he was in Air Force One.
Yep. He's like almost always plays the smarmy guy.
Yeah, he does. He's been in like Bull, MacGyver, The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Doesn't he Daryl's brother in Walking Dead?
No, that
other guy.
That was played by the incredible Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer, Michael Rooker.
Yeah, Michael Rooker. But yeah, Xander Berkeley. You'll know him when you see him. Anyway, he
always plays this like jerk of a character, and in this he's a college professor who's having an inappropriate relationship with
cheating
Helen.
on his wife.
He's with Helen, who is a grad student, and he's her professor, so that's inappropriate. He cheats on her with an even younger student,
as they all do,
because of course, I mean, you're dating someone who's doing something unethical, and you're surprised when they do further unethical things. But
so she's dead.
Yeah.
And he is like, uh-oh.
He feels bad.
I miss her.
He's still with the young piece of ass that he left her for.
And he never believed her when she was telling him all these things. But now he feels
bad because
he
she's
never
dead.
believed her. So what does he do? He stands in front of the mirror.
It's great.
And says her name,
Helen,
5 times.
Oh, Helen.
And she comes back with a hook.
Candy Helen.
Just like Candyman.
Yep.
And rips him to shreds.
She sure does. And it is cathartic.
She gets her just desserts.
It's cathartic. Nice.
Thank you.
She sure does. Sweets for the sweet indeed.
Yes. Sweet revenge.
Listen, you always like to see a jerk get their comeuppance. And you know what? A little aside shout out to Justin Long, who I feel like is the new Xander Berkeley. Just always playing those roles of like dipshit boyfriend.
Dipshit boyfriend, but not douchebag.
Oh, I feel like we need to see some of his other... Barbarian, I've heard a lot. About his role in Barbarian.
We're talking about Candyman.
Yes, we are.
And we will continue to talk about Candyman after this break.
From our very wealthy, generous sponsors.
Are you tired of being told to calm down? Annoyed at no one believing you when you say you see someone outside, or in the house, or following you home? Finally, a solution for you to prove once and for all you got this. Introducing Final Girl CBD Seltzer. FG Seltzer combines everything you love about that sparkly, bubbly treat with the calming and focused effect of cannabidiol. With just one 12-ounce can of FG you can make it through every bump in the night, hysterical frenemy outburst, inappropriate or unwanted romantic overtures, and jump scare after jump scare after jump scare. Try our enticing flavors like Redemption Raspberry, Exhausted by Elderberry, Extra Virgin Mary, and Mellow Melon Maniac. With each sip, feel all of the nonsense coming from those around you melt away while you figure out how to get yourself out of this fucking nightmare. This is a fake ad for a fake product on a horror-themed podcast. We do not make this amazing sounding seltzer for any reason, but if we did, this would be a great niche market. But we don't, and most likely won't. Delicious.
So good.
I'm going to crack one of those open right now.
I can't wait to drink the lifetime supply that they sent in my lifetime.
You can't. It's not for you. It's marketed for me.
Damn it. But it's pH balanced. But I like it too.
So I'm going to give you a few facts about the original Candyman.
I'd love to hear those facts.
Little trivia facts. First, I want to talk about Virginia Madsen.
Oh, who doesn't want to hear about Virginia Madsen?
I have a really special place in my heart because the first experience I had with Virginia Madsen is in a movie that nobody really knows about, called Electric Dreams.
Oh, yeah.
It came out in 1984. Yeah. And not only did it have
very young Virginia Madsen.
Yes, a cheesy / amazing soundtrack, including a song about the title of the movie.
Can we get some of it?
No. We'll always be together forever in electric dreams.
It's beautiful. I'm weeping.
Anyway, I loved it. I loved her. So when she has popped up in many, many movies and shows, I mean, she's been in so many things.
Can I tell you one of my favorites?
Yes, please.
The Prophecy with Christopher Walken and Elias Koteas.
Yeah. That's a great movie,
I
too.
love that movie.
She was in Dune.
Yeah.
Was she in the reboot or not? Yes, she was. Her voice.
Yes. Well, actually, I want to talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the remake.
She's also in a new upcoming movie coming out in October called Pray for the Devil.
And that's Prey.
Yeah, the devil.
The devil.
Devil.
Devil spelled like devil, pronounced
So let me tell you
like
a little
devil.
bit about the trivia of the first. The bees were specifically bred for this movie.
Yes.
They needed to make sure they
So
were
many
only
bees.
12 hours old so that they looked like mature bees, but their stingers wouldn't be powerful enough to do any damage.
Which was only partially successful.
All of the exterior hallway and stairway scenes were filmed actually in Cabrini Green.
Yeah, they spent 3 days filming on location with heavy police protection. And I'll get to that.
A sniper put a bullet in one of the production vans on the last day of filming.
As you do. Can we talk more about the bees?
You can talk more about the bees.
So the bees,
nobody's stopping.
They use those are real ass bees, as you mentioned.
Let's start over because I don't want it to be.
Were you buzzing the whole time? Oh man. So those were real bees, as you mentioned. There were over 200,000 bees, and they were wrangled by Hollywood bee wrangler Norman Gary, who also did the bees for My Girl.
Oh.
Ruh-roh.
I guess they were more than 18 days old.
Yeah.
Can I just say something? That you talked about a bee wrangler.
Yeah.
We just watched Nope.
Which was about horse wranglers. Yeah.
And other type of workers in this industry.
Yeah.
So.
Oh no, I mean there's an entire industry of animal
incredible.
handlers just for Hollywood productions. But so yeah, the same bees, not the same bees obviously, but the same bee guy as My Girl. So the
Do you have
scene,
a bee guy? You have a bee gal.
I mean, I do.
That's me.
I
My
don't work.
nickname's Bee.
I don't work with someone that doesn't already have a bee guy on speed dial ready
Right.
to go, or I don't work with them.
Do you
I
know,
walk.
do you know what you usually do when you
What's
when
that?
you got to get a hold of that bee guy?
Give him a buzz.
Yeah.
Oh God. I mean, I love that I could predict that's where it was going.
Oh, honey.
So now the scene where the bees are flying out of Candyman's mouth, those are real bees coming out of the very real Tony Todd's mouth.
And he was stung 26 times.
He was, I think it was 23.
Really? Do you have to?
Well, the
During
reason,
the entirety of
the reason I know that-
Candyman trilogy,
okay.
26 times.
So they had to put a protective lining in his mouth. It took over 30 minutes to stuff all those bees into his mouth, during which Tony Todd said he went into sort of a trance or else he would lose his mind.
Jeez Louise.
He
bees.
negotiated a $1,000 bonus for every time he got stung. And according to Tony Todd, he made $23,000 by the end of the shoot.
Wow, that's some money.
Yeah.
Honey.
So that's just, I just wanted to add that bee stuff.
So yeah, that's a good B
We can leave that on the B-roll
roll
if we want to.
That's what I
Yeah.
wanted.
Yeah.
Some B-roll stuff.
Just splice it in later.
So one of the other sort of trivia notes is Helen and Bernadette discover that the apartment's medicine cabinet made a good point of entry for an intruder in when they were doing their investigation, and this was made up piece of horror movie fiction. It was made up. They made it up. Bernard Rose learned that a series of murders had actually been committed in Chicago this very way. So they had made it up, but it actually was something that really happened.
It was the murder of Ruthie Mae McCoy, I believe was her name. Another instance of, I believe she called 911 several times and was ignored. And when the cops came, they were too late.
Yeah. Virginia Madsen, back to her, she said this is the movie she gets most recognized for.
Oh, that makes sense.
And then any other movie.
Sure.
And
I'd say it's a crowning achievement.
Yeah.
It's a classic.
She's really proud of it, you know.
Good. It's always nice when artists look back at their work and they're proud of the good stuff. Unlike Alec Guinness making little kids cry at Star Wars conventions.
You might have to loop this back around to the B-roll, but Virginia Madsen also had to get super close to the bees, and Bernard Rose asked her to do the role. She said, I can't because I'm allergic to bees.
Yes.
So he said, no, you're not allergic to bees. You're just afraid. So he already started getting her in character by not believing her.
Yeah, there you go. And you know what? What the fuck?
So it gets even...
So what if she did get stung and went into shock? What's Bernard Rose doing at that point?
She had to go to UCLA to get tested because he didn't believe her. She was tested for every kind of venom, and she found out she was far more allergic to wasps. So he said, we'll just have paramedics there. It'll be fine. And
what's more comforting than hearing someone say, we'll just have paramedics there. It'll be fine. Oh,
so they only use
as long as paramedics are there.
I know.
Tourniquets ready to go.
They only use the baby bees on her.
Yeah, yeah.
It's less likely to get stung. And, she said that when you have pheromones on you, they all fall in love with you because they think you're a giant queen. So they made sure that they had pheromones.
Maybe they just
covered.
knew that Virginia Madsen is a queen.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
So again, she also had to go into the Zen state.
Man.
Mm-hmm.
I hope she got paid a lot. Probably didn't.
Probably did.
Probably did not.
No.
But I want to talk a little bit about the actual site of Cabrini Green because it was a very real place.
Can I just finish up with a couple
100%.
other facts?
Yes.
Sweets to the Sweet is a line from Hamlet, Shakespeare's Hamlet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Which really plays into the vibe of the movie. It has a real grandeur, this movie.
The Candyman legend combines two real urban legends, Bloody Mary, which is the ghost that appears by chanting her name in the mirror, and the Hook, the killer with the hook for a hand, who attacks couples in parked cars.
At make-out point.
We did just a music episode, sound design episode, and so whenever Candyman's walking, his footsteps have no sound, signifying the status of his myth.
That's so cool. I love those little details. And of course, there's Philip Glass's incredible score.
Yes. Yep. Philip Glass.
Yeah.
Philip Glass. We talked about
we did.
Last time.
We did. Glass time.
And Virginia Madsen was hypnotized for real and given a trigger phrase on set.
Wow.
For her scenes with Candyman. And it made her super uncomfortable, and she asked for that method to not continue.
I can understand why.
Mm-hmm.
I can understand why. That's a bit extreme. It's just a goddamn movie. But Bernard Rose made the decision to have Candyman mesmerize her because he didn't want to use the trope of a woman screaming when she was afraid.
He's very romantic. Like it's almost as if he seduces her.
And there is that very like Dracula effect. Bernard Rose, his other films, I mean, he did Immortal Beloved. Speaking of Dracula, starring Gary Oldman. He did, he was a music video director. I told you, with a bit of a racy streak. He is a very sensual filmmaker. And that is layered throughout this movie. There's always a fine line between violence and sensuality.
They had to take ballroom dancing classes together, Virginia Madsen and Tony Todd.
I mean, their chemistry is excellent.
Yeah.
It's excellent. Yeah. And that sort of work behind the scenes really does show on screen. So can I talk a little bit about Cabrini Green?
I guess.
So it was a very real place. We talked about they filmed some of the scenes on there. Before filming, Tony Todd and Virginia Madsen, with a police escort, went to Cabrini Green to do some role research, and that's a situation that they both described as distressing. So Cabrini Green in Chicago was a housing project that began its life in the 1850s as a series of like shanty houses and DIY sort of just lean-tos. Built largely by Sicilian immigrants. It was actually known as Little Sicily at that point.
Oh, wow.
It was just sort of built on and iterated upon, and then it was sort of legitimized by the Chicago Housing Authority in 1942, which built the first like real building there. At its height, I believe it was 10 buildings housing roughly 15,000 people, so enormous complex. It was
demolished in 2011.
It was demolished in 2011. For the majority of his lifetime, it was plagued with poverty, drugs, gang warfare, crime, police brutality, murder. It was also always in the news. It was just very. It was a media darling, So anytime anything happened at Cabrini Green, it got national news. One of the most famous incidents occurred in 1981 when then Mayor Jane Byrne, who was a real groundbreaking female politician, she did what politicians do, made a stupid decision. She decided she was going to raise awareness about Cabrini Green and show that it's a wonderful place to live by moving in there herself. So this white mayor moved in with her husband in 1981. Now, of course, before she moved in, she had around 800 residents evicted for suspected gang activity. She lived there under heavy police guard. They reinforced the apartment with like steel and whatnot. And she lived in this quote unquote wonderful place to live for a little less than 3 weeks before moving out. So Cabrini Green was no joke. It was, the one resident I believe described it as, living there was like a series of well-intentioned people coming in trying to fix things, and nothing ever changes. Yeah. So it was a very sad place plagued by violence. And the original story, as written by Clive Barker, took place in Liverpool, England.
Mm-hmm.
And it was much more about class struggles than race. Bernard Rose chose to move it to Cabrini Green and focus around race and class.
I know that there was a lot of work that Bernard Rose did in order to make sure that this wasn't a, white savior,
Yes.
racist commentary. He met with Illinois black rights leaders.
Yeah, and when Bernard Rose met with the NAACP, they actually, there was some quote-unquote controversy that people were trying to gin up about this, and the NAACP made a statement saying, no, we love this. Why can't there be a black Freddy Krueger? Why can't there be a black Jason? Because I guess the idea was, you can't have, a black villain. That's racist. But they were like, no, it's... Don't you understand? We deserve to be represented in the pantheon of these other famous characters. And they were right.
Yeah.
Candyman is one of the all-time legends.
I know it was one of the first films I was exposed to with, a black person of color, a person of color in a lead role
It's
in a horror film. I can't think of one that predated that I
it was quite rare. Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's definitely always been one of my favorites.
It was one of the first movies that truly scared me.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the first movies I saw that went beyond just frightening me in the moment or maybe giving me scary dreams for one night. It stuck with me forever. Honestly, it's a beautiful film that deserves multiple rewatches. And you're absolutely right. It's directed by a white man, but I don't want to get too far into this, but I don't really ascribe to the notion that you are only allowed to tell stories from the point of view that you have lived yourself. I think if you're going to tell a story from another point of view, you have to do the research and be respectful, which is what Bernard Rose did.
Well, I think also inviting that point of view to collaborate is important as well.
Yes, there's a big difference between...
You don't want to misrepresent.
Yeah.
No matter how much research you do, I think you want to bring
into the room.
Yeah,
bring the
you
voices.
Bring that perspective in and do a good job of executing that vision.
I absolutely agree. I think art is meant to be shared. I think there are ways to be done that it can be done respectfully, collaboratively, and with reverence. And I don't think it's healthy to further separate each other. I just think that we should all be able to tell the difference between a respectful and well-thought representation and a cheap cash grab that's exploitative.
Absolutely.
Which Candyman is not. Candyman is legit. So honestly, just watch it. Oh man.
Well, we're not even close to being done.
I know
so
we're going to talk about
the
we're going to talk about the remake.
So spoiler alert, obviously we spoiled the entire 1992, but
that's what these
30
things
years
are.
ago.
Let's make remakes
but that's
are spoilery.
30 years ago, so
we
now
spoil.
2021 is not that long ago. So if you haven't seen that, maybe pause it here.
Yeah.
And come back when you're done watching it.
We will, while you're doing that, we will move from one luxury property to another one just because.
Just got to get on the jet.
Like all incredibly wealthy
Wheels
people,
up in 5.
we get bored. We just get really bored.
Okay, so the remake, as you were.
Are you back now? Did y'all watch it? It was good, right?
Again, it's not really a remake.
Yeah,
it was marketed as I mentioned earlier, a contemporary incarnation of the 1992 movie.
It's very much a sequel to the original Candyman. It absolutely ignores the second and third, which is good.
Yes.
Because those weren't very good movies. I'm sorry. They just weren't.
So just a brief overview of who is the Who. In this one, This was directed by Nia DaCosta.
Yes.
And
we're going to be hearing a lot more from Nia DaCosta over the next few years. She is an up-and-comer.
Universal Pictures wrote that this film was a fresh take on the original. And there were new additions to the character's backstory that DaCosta brought in. So the Candyman in DaCosta's movie is a friendly man who enjoyed giving sweets to the neighborhood kids. And after razor blades were found in some candy, police beat him, tortured, and killed him, only to find more razor blades in more candy, proving that Candyman that was beat and killed by the police wasn't actually the culprit.
Yes, this version of Candyman was named Sherman Fields, and this event took place in 1977 in the story. And then, like you said, after the cops murdered him, the events kept happening.
Yes.
So Fields was lynched, like so many others, for no reason. Also, like the original Candyman was lynched.
Yes. So Candyman by Sammy Davis Jr. is playing in the background of a flashback in this new
from
version.
Willy Wonka, right? Yep. Yeah.
There's sort of like a cartoonish feel of
Who
the
can
beginning
take
of
a
the
hook
song.
stump, shove it in your throat.
And the movie starts with a scene in the projects as a young boy named William goes to do his laundry, which is located in a separate building, when white police officers show him a flyer saying, "Have you seen this man?" And William turns and goes into the building and starts to feel super creeped out. And the man named Sherman comes through a hole in the wall and offers him candy.
And it's very likely that Sherman is mentally disabled, and means no harm. He's not done anything.
No,
there's no indication he's ever committed a crime of any sort.
No, but then he's
but the young boy William screams,
and then the police, since they are right outside, come in and kill Sherman.
Heroes.
So now we're in present day after this killing of Sherman.
It started in 1977.
Yep. And Brianna is an art dealer, and her artist boyfriend Anthony is they're living together. Brianna is played by Tiona Paris, and Anthony is played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen.
Amazing. What a cast.
Yeah, it really is. Yahya Abdul-Mateen, you might know him from Aquaman, Watchmen.
Oh, yeah. In Watchmen, especially.
Yeah.
But he's an up-and-coming megastar. And just an aside for Tiona Paris, you might have seen her in WandaVision. She's going to be reuniting with Nia DaCosta. Nia DaCosta's directing the sequel to Captain Marvel, just called The Marvels, and Tiona Paris is going to be playing Monica Rambeau, her character from WandaVision. So they'll be working together again, which is great because I'm just going to level with you. The Candyman 2021 is awesome.
Yeah, it really is. We're with Anthony and Brianna. Troy, Anthony's brother, comes in and he tells them the story of Helen, Cabrini Green, and the Candyman. So this is the way that Nia DaCosta brings in the 1992 movie into the 2021 film. That is the backdrop of how these two are like a new spin, fresh take on this old film. They bring legendary story in.
This film takes place 30 years later.
Yeah.
And the legend of this crazy white woman that stole a black baby and died in a bonfire has been told for 30 years.
Yes. So Anthony starts to do research about Helen and starts to research Cabrini Green.
Which has been torn down at this point and gentrified.
Right. And then he meets up with William. Do we remember William?
We do remember William. William is now all grown up.
Yes. So William tells him all about Candyman.
He runs a laundromat.
Yep. He did. Yep. He tells him all about Candyman, and then Anthony gets stung by a bee during this story.
Yeah.
So Anthony has an art show. A white critic shits all over his art.
Which his art is starting to take a very
specific angry
and
tone.
Racial, violent tone of black rage, of vengeance, and it's beyond Anthony's understanding really where this is coming from, because he is a black man living in Chicago, but he lives a very pampered life in a beautiful apartment with his upper class girlfriend.
Yeah.
He lives the life of an artist. He wants for nothing, and he is investigating a past that a past of Chicago that he really is disconnected from.
Right. And it's his paramour Brianna that owns the art gallery, that displays his art and believes in him. And it's sort of the first connotation of Candyman, because in the gallery there's a couple there that's hooking up, and there's a mirror, and the girl says
I think
Candyman
it's the owner of the
times.
gallery and the girl he's hooking up with.
Oh yeah. And so she says it. Candyman comes, kills them both, and then it's all over the news.
Yeah.
Like the whole thing is just destroyed.
It plays along with Jordan Peele's taking down of the white liberal of.
Oh, did we even mention Jordan Peele?
Jordan Peele wrote this.
Yes, he wrote this.
He wrote it, produced it. Now that really plays into his theme of taking down the moderate white liberal, which Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. very famously warned us all about. In that, there's the very hard line of their comfort level of, yes, I want to talk about these causes, but not to the point where it ruins my evening of sipping wine and looking at art.
Yeah.
I don't really want to know the truth of it because that sounds grody. So, they want to invite a black artist in to show his art, but when his art turns out to be too raw for them, it's very uncomfortable, and they really, really take it to task.
So, yeah, as things start to get progressively more obsessive for Anthony.
Oh, he starts to really lose his shit.
It is displayed in his art. And, he talks about how he's gotten a lot of attention because of the murders. And his bee sting is like going crazy.
Yeah, there's an element of body horror in that it starts to necrotize. And he goes to visit someone.
Yeah, the art critic, the one that shit.
No. He goes to visit his mother, who is someone very important.
Oh well, yeah.
Are we getting to that?
We are. But he goes to the art critic's apartment, and was like, I'm legit, and he starts to hallucinate there, and he just like gets her killed.
At this point,
he essentially gets that art critic killed.
At this point, Yahya Abdul-Mateen's character Anthony
he's infected.
He's changing.
Yeah,
he's changing. Yeah.
So now, yes, bring up the fact he finally goes to get help for his hand, which is rotting away and turning into a honeycomb.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. Pretty gross. If your hand starts to look like that, go to a doctor.
When he goes to the hospital, he finds out that that's where he was born. He was told he's born at the hospital, but he's like, that's not right. So that's when he goes to his mom's house. And that's where the audience finds out that the baby that Helen saved is Anthony.
That's right. His mom is Anne Marie from the first movie.
Yep.
The woman whose baby was taken and handed back to her. And she tells him the story of Candyman. She doesn't let him say the name out loud.
Nope.
And she forbids him from pursuing it further, which, he doesn't listen to that part.
Right. Do you want to talk about the ending? Because I know that you wanted to talk about the difference of ending.
The ending.
And then I have some details there.
So
some other trivia facts.
What makes this film, in my opinion, so brilliant is the way it it grows and expands the myth of Candyman. And this is really credited to Nia DaCosta, because Jordan Peele, when he wrote the script, his original idea was to have Helen Lyle, Virginia Madsen, be the villain of the movie, which makes sense because by the end of the first movie, she is the new Candyman.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't quite play into... There was always something about the original movie that bothered me, and it's that what is Candyman? And if Daniel Robitaille is
it attached to the building? Is it attached to the urban legend? Is it attached to the people who conjure the urban legend?
Well,
is it, something that's awakened? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a
idea,
lot of unknowns.
We didn't talk about this too much, but the whole purpose of Candyman and the power behind Candyman is the belief in Candyman. So he's much like a god in a way, in that he can only exist because people fear him and talk about him. So when he says things like, be my victim... Be my victim. I mean, you can't emulate that beautiful voice. He kills to reignite interest and fear in the myth of Candyman, because the more people are believing in him, the more powerful he is, and he lives on. Mm-hmm. So the brilliant thing that the sequel does is getting back to what I was saying, what always kind of confused me and bothered me a little bit about the original is I could never quite understand what Candyman's purpose was. If he was a black man wrongfully killed by a white lynch mob, why did he kill so many poor black people? Why did he seem to terrorize the poor black community of Cabrini Green? In the sequel, this is addressed. So the way that the second movie ends, the sequel remake, 2021, is Anthony. No, it all gets revealed that William Burke, the little boy from the beginning, is masterminding Anthony's transformation into Candyman. He's basically reconjuring Candyman because people have forgotten. But he is going to change the purpose of Candyman. Candyman, until this point, has existed as a sort of unfocused rage. And William Burke is going to focus that rage against the gentrifiers, the modern-day colonizers, the police, the white aristocracy, the people coming in and pricing the original folks out of their own neighborhoods, the people who made it a shithole in the first place by bisecting it with highways and, brutalizing its people with police and restrictive zoning laws, and then profit off of it in its obscene way that we see in real life. So Burke's plan, he doesn't live to see it, but it does work, because the movie ends with Brianna being questioned by the police, and she, knowing she's pretty screwed, conjures Candyman in the interrogation room using her reflection in the interrogation mirror. And Candyman as Yahya Abdul-Mateen.
Right, because as you see throughout the movie, it's not... So, when we watch the original, Helen's reflection was Helen's reflection. Mm-hmm. But Anthony's reflection was Candyman's reflection, back in all mirrors.
And in this moment where he shows up, and it's an incredible denouement. I mean, he slaughters this police station and says to Brianna, tell everyone what you just saw. Spread my legend. And in this moment, Candyman is reborn, more powerful than ever, but also more focused than ever. He's become certainly still a villain and a murderer, but now he's also has an element of like an avenging angel, a protector, a spirit of rage, of vengeance. And in this moment, it's fascinating. You see Yahya Abdul-Mateen, you see Tony Todd. You don't see Virginia Madsen, but she does have a vocal cameo during Anthony's transformation.
And there's a dress of hers that was worn by others in
She's
this
heavily
movie.
referenced,
Yes.
and there was, I believe, a scene shot that was cut from the original, and I get it. Keeping the focus on the black characters, and it plays more to the focus of the message of the second film. In that moment, the Candyman hive is born, and it's really just such an incredible representation of generational trauma. Of this boy Anthony cannot outrun the trauma of his past, even though he didn't have anything to do with it. He was just a baby. the pain that carries through century after century, evils done to each other that reverberate throughout the ages. But one of the most fascinating things about the Candyman hive is Nia DaCosta did something very bold. She mixed in images of in between the fictional Candyman of Sherman and Daniel and Anthony. She mixed in pictures of actual real people that have been lynched. Anthony Crawford, James Byrd Jr., and George Stinney. I definitely recommend you look up the stories. I remember when James Byrd Jr. was murdered. It was only in the 90s, but look up the stories of Anthony Crawford and George Stinney. These are men. George Stinney was just a boy. They deserve to have their stories remembered. But mixing them in was so powerful, and it did require research. I didn't know who they were just by seeing their faces. But
I would say one of the major takeaways in the differences of these two movies is really intention. So the intention of the 1992 was really to create, this character, this fear, this horror movie that was unique, unlike any other. Great, which is amazing. Now we cut to Nia DaCosta and even Jordan Peele's intention of this movie is really to focus on something deeper, something that is more than just superficial. It's not a horror movie. It's let's examine the true horrors here and realize how when we jump to conclusions or when we, don't do the work or we think we know something.
It reminds me of there's a scene I remember, I think it's like the first season of The Wire, where there's a white cop and he's getting ready to go undercover as a homeless guy. There's a white cop and a black cop, and they're getting ready to go undercover as homeless people. And there's a real homeless informant that works with them, and he's like, "No one's going to believe you. Look at your shoes. You just rub a little dirt on your face, and you think that makes you look dirty. Look at your skin. Like you don't have any sores. You don't have any skin conditions. You're not like wasting. You're not missing teeth
outside. You haven't lived it.
You look like a regular person putting on a costume,
pretending.
Yeah, and I'd say that's one of the differences is you have genuine lived authenticity telling a story versus someone who's researched and brought in outside opinions, but.
If you think about Helen as researching and doing the work to really uncover this legend and history, she's not killed until the end when she makes the deal, but it's almost as if she's showing respect.
Yeah, and
by
Candyman,
doing the work and not
Candyman
just making the assumption.
He's saving her too to witness to be part of the narrative.
Yeah. So before we end, I just want to talk about some trivia of this one.
Yeah, I did want to say that one through line for both of these films, and it's very Clive Barker, is they both examine the nature of and the power of story, of narrative, of legend, and of the idea that our gods, our fears, our boogeymen, they have as much power as we give them.
Right.
They continue on because we tell our children stories about them. And
they're not always the harbingers of like death that we believe them to be. It's actually something else.
That's what I thought was so incredible about Nia DaCosta's interpretation, was that you can alter the direction of a legend.
Speaking of Clive Barker, although he wasn't involved in this iteration, they did pay homage to him in a couple of ways. They named a character Clive. They also had William Burke reading Weave World, which is a Clive Barker novel, in one of the scenes.
That's a great one.
Yeah, so they did bring him in.
Where is my
that's great.
Film version of the Damnation game, Hollywood? I have been waiting almost 40 years for that.
So just a few pieces of information. Jordan Peele, as we mentioned, wrote this screenplay, and he was originally attached to direct, but he brought in Nia, and she later became the first female filmmaker to have a movie open at first place at the box office.
Get Out. Seriously?
Not Get Out. Candyman.
No, oh shit, you got me. But no, isn't it incredible to say something like that in this happened in 2021? It's like, it's a wonderful accomplishment, but also that hadn't happened already.
Yeah. To your point,
And again, it's a horror movie.
I think it dethroned Free Guy.
Oh, you know what? I like that movie too. It was fun.
The shadow puppets in the film were used to convey the horrors of racial violence, and they were created by artist Kara Walker.
Can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about the shadow puppets because the trailer for the 2021 Candyman used the shadow puppets in the heavily in the first trailer, and it's one of the most brilliant trailers I've ever seen. That is actually an ancient
because it's like a children's cautionary tale.
Yes.
So you bring in that sort of Punch and Judy dark puppetry.
Well, this comes from an ancient Javanese art form called wayang, which is shadow puppets. And for a wonderful representation of this, check out Joko Anwar's movie Impetigore. I actually mentioned this movie in our folk horror episode. It's so good. And Joko Anwar, any of his movies is worth a watch. But wayang puppetry is that intricate shadow puppetry that they use in the trailer. It's just so cool. There's so much.
The crying baby from the first film was reused, the sound in this current film, in the 2021 film.
Yikes. And we've established how creepy crying babies are.
The crew actually encountered a real bee infestation during filming.
Huh.
Real bees.
Separate from the 200,000 bees they brought with them? Did you guys had bees? Because we brought all these bees. If you said you had bees, we wouldn't have brought all these bees.
Exactly. I'm sorry. Does everybody bring bees?
Is there anything more humiliating than showing up to a bee party and you've brought bees?
The movie's tagline dares the viewer to say Candyman's name.
Oh yeah,
it's a part of its marketing was a Snapchat filter that gave those willing to do so a scare. You can only imagine what that was.
I remember when the original came out, I totally did the fucking Candyman thing in the mirror, and I chickened out a few times.
I did Bloody Mary when I was a kid.
See, I didn't know about that until
that's scary.
Like Candyman
you went
came
to
out.
Catholic school. They were probably like, nope, it's Virgin Mary. It's pronounced Virgin Mary.
Bloody Mary is just what we call anyone getting their period.
This is the fourth Candyman movie, and this is the first Candyman movie to have a black protagonist.
It is also only the second one worth watching.
And it was originally set to be released in 2020 because that's when Candyman Day of the Dead takes place.
Which was the third movie.
Yeah.
Interesting. What got in the way in that? Was there something happening across the world that maybe
I don't know.
slowed things down?
I wasn't
paying attention.
Out. I didn't go out during the 2020s.
By choice.
Yeah. So,
listener, you've probably noticed a little bit of a trend with our Make remakes is that we tend to pick things where we like both versions.
Yeah, you insist on it.
I do. I just maybe one day we'll get to it, but I'm just worried that I'm gonna dump all over a movie, and not all movies work, but they are all difficult to make, and they take a lot of people working very hard. And I'm not that interested in getting on here and being like, "Oh, this sucks," even if it does. I'll say something doesn't work, but anyway.
Or I'll say, that's not for me, or I don't really like body horror.
I just really don't buy into the idea that a remake is inherently due to a lack of ideas. I think this is a perfect example of a sequel / remake / reimagining, whatever you want to call it, that pays respect to the original, that in no way diminishes the original. Some remakes kind of make you look at the original movie and you're like, and on its own, it's both a continuation of the story and its own thing.
Both of them can be watched and enjoyed as single movies without, losing any message behind it. I would say, though, that the 2021 version, you would benefit greatly if you watched the 1992 version.
I absolutely recommend watching them in order. It's just that I think the theme going with the remakes we've been choosing is that they walk a fine line, and they do it beautifully, of continuing the story of the original while also very much telling its own story. And that's not easy to do, as is evidenced by how many crummy remakes there are. But Candyman 1992 is an all-timer, and 2021, I need a little bit more time with it, but it's a fantastic movie with a lot of talent. I'm excited to see where they all go.
I think you should check them both out. And
100%.
As the producer of this podcast, I don't really think we need to justify why we do what we do.
That's true. Yeah. Screw you guys for judging me. So is that it?
Yeah, let's open ourselves up for more judgment next week.
All right. Make remake Candyman. That's a go, people. I don't know who I'm talking to.
I really just wish you'd stop talking.
I already ended like 10 minutes ago. We haven't been recording in 20 minutes.
Oh, good.
Bye. Terror in Tandem is written, produced, and recorded by Laura and Richard Mathiasen, and edited and mixed by Richard Mathiasen. Our theme was written and performed by Carrie Denver, and all other music was written and performed by David Suspanic. All opinions expressed on this podcast are our own and should be taken as such. Thanks for listening, and please remember to give us a like, a review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time. We're standing right behind you.